Hey everybody, it's your pal Mike Zombie, and this week we're going to talk about Land of the Dead from 2005. This film came out 20 years after Day of the Dead, so George had some time to figure out what he wanted to do. And the original trilogy is so loved that, of course, you're going to let George do whatever he wants. I've been pretty shameless about my love for Romero's work, for zombies in general, especially his, and Dawn of the Dead. Most of you have heard me babble on and on about it. Between this and the Zombie Mob, it's not a secret. And I have here with me a full page of notes, which means I was sitting there going, what? And writing things down. I kind of have a split personality on this film. While I love Romero, I didn't like this film. And it's easy enough to say that I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. A lot of people like to shoot this film down, talk about how bad it is. And to be honest with you, I'd watched bits and pieces of it over the last couple of years and would just end up leaving in the middle of the movie or doing something else, not really sitting down and giving it a whole full watch. So last night I actually watched it start to finish. I'm really bummed out. I wish there was more that I could take from this. I would like to add it in some weird way, link it back to the trilogy, but I think I'm still going to refer to the trilogy simply as that. Because while Night, Dawn, and Day weren't perfect, they were good, real good, and had an honest feel to them. Land of the Dead just, I don't know. It didn't feel natural to me. It didn't feel organic. A lot of it didn't make sense. And that's what kills me. George, I love your work, but I'm going to shoot you out of the sky here. And please understand, everybody listening to this, understand that while I did not like this movie, and yeah, I'm going to take George to task on a lot of this stuff. That's like saying, anybody remember the candy called Whoppers? You'd get them in a big like milk carton, and they were just chocolate-covered milk duds. That's kind of like what George Romero's films are to me. They're delicious Whoppers. And you're eating them, you're enjoying them one after another, and every now and then, as you remember with Whoppers, you bite one that's as hard as a fucking rock, and you spit it out like, what the fuck was this? It bums you out, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the entire box. That's George Romero to me, as a box of Whoppers. Just to read over, and if you haven't seen this film, Land of the Dead is set in the future in a city that is walled off by 3 rivers and some bridges. So it's really not accessible with the bridges up unless you can come across the water. And it's kind of like a slum town. We don't know how much of the world has been destroyed by whatever apocalypse. They really don't tell us. They do mention rescue stations here and there. They specifically mention Cleveland, but not a lot is said about where we could go, where people have gone, and how that's worked out. But we see we're really far into this apocalypse. And it's a slum city. But in the middle of the slum city is this gem. Among the other skyscrapers, which look very drab, there is a bright, vibrant, well-lit skyscraper called Fiddler's Green, which is a whole other thing. You would have to read the lore of Fiddler's Green to figure that out. But this is a almost like a luxury hotel. It's got everything: shopping, dining, suites, and people live there. The wealthy live there. And what I don't understand about this is they show people living there and living well, having everything they want, and then they show people outside living in the slums, people that are sick. But they don't show any industry. I'm wondering to myself, how do all these nice things show up? How does this thing keep going on so clean and as nice and as highbrow as it is? Because we see that they send out teams of scavengers, professional scavengers for the most part, into old dead cities to bring back cans of food, alcohol, and things like this, which is fine, which would make sense, but really doesn't lend itself to the lifestyle these people were living. So I don't really understand that. They show people having business meetings and eating fine foods and almost a luxury life. Well, I'll just get to my notes. This film, this city, has some of what we've come to like in George's films, but a lot of them are almost a mockery now. I think the things George did originally were fun and interesting, and when he redoes them, it kind of takes away from, oh, that was just something cool that he did that makes sense. Now it's like, well, he did it, throw it in because that's what we expect to see. I'm going to jump almost to the end of my list. Okay, I've had enough of theme zombies. For fuck's sake. I've liked when zombies obviously are caught in the middle of doing something. They're still done up exactly as they were. I was at cheerleading practice. I probably picked the wrong example because you don't expect me to be at cheerleading practice unless I'm in a van being creepy. But let's say I'm a cheerleader and the zombie apocalypse happens. Bang, I get killed. Bang, I come back. All right, well, guess what? I'm wearing what I was wearing at the time, and it's probably going to be pretty distinctive and pretty easy to identify what I've got on. But years later, you're not going to see me walking around in that outfit with pom-poms in my hand because it just wouldn't happen. You drop those things. They would fall apart. They'd get caught on something and get pulled off. And George really goes out of his way, again, to make theme zombies like clown zombies with makeup on and the nose on. It just wouldn't be that way. Any reasonable time after that apocalypse of walking around and bumping, if you bumped into one thing slightly with your face every day, once a day, slightly, like a wall, your face would pretty much be wiped clean in a matter of months. So all this time later, people are still wearing full clown makeup with a nose on and shit and crazy wig. That shit takes me immediately right out of the film. There was some of that bugged me. But he kind of mocks his own stuff, but presents it as a real film. And what gets me is this film looks beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful zombie work. You can thank Nicotero for that, because Nicotero was in charge of that, though Savini makes an appearance. And I'm getting real close to declaring, I'm going to have to do some watching and some research into the kind of work Savini does now. Because everything that's being done now, you got to be careful how I say this. And you know I love these films. And when we leave special effects as far as CGI aside and we talk about practical effects and what's being done with makeup and what's being done with faces and zombies, I think Nicotero is the standard that Savini used to be. He's the new standard. I'm going to have to do some research and see what kind of work Savini himself has done in the last 15 years that would stand anywhere close to what Nicotero does now and his crew. And if it was a CGI issue, well, it's a computerized zombie face. Oh, I would understand. And I would have a big line in between the two, but I don't think that's always the case. And, oh boy. See, and I'm walking lightly here because I know I'm going to piss some people off. Tom Savini came up in a time where there really wasn't any zombie effects and kind of started from his imagination and made these things happen. And now that we have money behind, serious money behind these projects, they look incredibly different. But people like to say, well, you can really see Savini's combat photographer experience coming out from Vietnam in his work. Why? Why so? He painted people blue and made blood squirt. Don't get me wrong. His blood work was fine. I like it still. Lenny Lies gets the hatchet in his head. Okay, that was cool. Helicopter zombie loses his head. Flat Top gets it chopped right off on the boxes. That was really good stuff. Really inventive stuff. And I do appreciate that and still hold that close to my heart and love it. But as far as his zombies go, Night of the Living Dead wasn't very good. Dawn of the Dead wasn't very good. They're just people painted blue. It was the people that made them and the situation. But when he got to Day of the Dead, all right, now Tom's got some money behind him, and he's going home at night and he's dreaming about this stuff and he's coming in and he's making it happen. So for me, Savini's work wasn't even an issue until Day of the Dead 85. Bub, which still remains my favorite zombie ever, as I know it's the same for many of you. George tried to revisit a lot of those themes in this film. Eugene Clark played Big Daddy, who I guess is the evolution of Bub. I didn't like him. We see in this film zombies coming back, however they come back, and they evolve somewhat. They pick up their old habits. They do things that they used to do with real good memory. Where Bub, as you remember, Bub was just struggling to hang on to some memories, to try to bumble through motions, and could repeat a few things. Now the zombies are different in this film in a very brief span, because they kind of say, hey, these zombies are different than they were yesterday. So apparently the evolution was almost overnight, from they just go around in these groups, kill zombies, and take canned beans back to Fiddler's Green, to, hey, today's a new day, and suddenly, holy shit, these things are using tools, they're chasing us, they're becoming smarter, they're talking to each other. I am kind of interested in a zombie language and mannerisms and how they talk to each other. And I saw a bit of that the other day watching Cullen, where zombies growl other zombies off of their food and scare them. So I kind of like that. But for George Romero to kind of bring that to this film and make it the driving force behind the zombies, I didn't like it. Didn't make sense. Why tissue that's rotting and degenerating? And George hasn't had a problem, especially in Day of the Dead, showing zombies that were damn near decrepit and almost not moving. So why the reversal? Why suddenly zombies are getting better and getting smarter? I'm going to grab my notes here and make it easier for me, because my handwriting looks like it was done by fucking Helen Keller. I have a problem with, again, George wants us to believe that these are groups of paramilitary biker gangs that go out, not so different from the pagans from Dawn of the Dead, except these guys have it a little more together. So why in the middle of an apocalypse when everything on the road is trying to kill you, are you showing off like assholes doing wheelies and doing burnouts? And these people were doing the jousting and riding around like they were doing in his other film, Knight Riders, which I like Knight Riders, but why you would be so careless and so reckless in an unforgiving, immediate death spot such as a road filled with zombies is beyond me. I don't think anybody would do it, but he chose to put that in here purposefully. I didn't like the fact that with all this technology at our fingertips, they're using shitty $10 walkie-talkies to communicate. And they're driving around in a giant half taco truck, half motorhome called Dead Reckoning, which is a nice little name for a big, stupid vehicle. So George Romero's created this world where we have pretty much a high-class hotel that the rich people live in, the socias live in, and yet the greasers, like Ralph Macchio, whole another thing, live outside like Thunderdome. And to me, it was a blatant ripoff of... I mean, you could lump this. You've seen these people in all the 3 Mad Max movies. You've seen them in Escape from New York. It's the same kind of, hey, guess what? We're living on the streets, but that's what we've got. And we're all here together. And, you know, it's kind of dirty and gritty, but it's us. I've seen this plenty of times. The paramilitary groups go out in Mad Max-looking vehicles, riding motorcycles and wheelies, of course, because fuck it, why not? And this giant armored machine called Dead Reckoning, which looks like a fucking motorhome with plating on the outs. I'm sorry, it just does. It looks stupid. Do you remember that G.I. Joe giant car thing that they had? It was like half car in the back like Mad Max, but the front looked like a Firebird. It kind of reminds me of that from the mid-'80s. And they go out and blow zombies away. Now, the way they do this is it's covered with guns. And it's got a couple of rocket launchers in the front, but on the very top, it's got a fireworks setup. It launches mortars into the sky because just like it does the rest of us, it distracts the zombies while people walk right by them and kill them. Which, I'm going to say, that was inventive. I like that. So to George, that was a great move. I like that fact that the flowers in the sky capture the zombies' attention. Brilliant. And because you know what? When I see those, last night was the 4th of July, folks, and I was standing on my back porch doing very much the same thing. And then I came in and watched this film and I laughed. I'm like, I've been doing that for the last 2 hours out on my porch. So, okay, call me a zombie. It works. I like that idea. So they go out in this giant beast, blow everything up, and... Okay, let's talk about Dead Reckoning. It's a neat name. I remember seeing the photos for it when they were doing the teasers for the filming. And I thought, that looks interesting. But it seems to me to be stupid. In a world that's dead, in a world that's barely kept alive electronically, they more than once reference the stations, and they don't know if people are there generating power, and this city's surrounded by an electric fence. But you go inside this machine, Dead Reckoning, and it's like you're in the middle of a fucking video game. Lights, switches, and I did notice a screen when they're launching that said, I wrote it here. It says GPS data uplink. GPS, huh? You're fucking with GPS in the zombie apocalypse when no one's allowed around to maintain these machines? Right. And they have all these interfaces and all this connectivity inside. Guess what, folks? The internet's fucking gone. Okay. And the buffoons that stumble into power in this city at the end aren't going to be smart enough to keep that going. There's no infrastructure. There's no food being created. There's no farming. Guess what? We're not going to have any fucking computer stuff going on. Okay. Bothered me. He tried to put 2 worlds together that cannot mesh, at least not any way I can think of. I did note here that in 25 minutes and 17 seconds, and you see a nice set of boobs. Thank you for that. And I put on here, wow. Blunderdome is retarded. They show us reduced to animals because we're poor. So what do we want to do? We want to watch zombies fight. We want to have souvenir photos taken with zombies because are we tourists or what are we? Are we poor? If we're poor, we're not sitting around paying for zombie souvenir photos. But I would pay for a photo with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. I sure would. That'd be great for my wall. John Leguizamo plays Cholo, and he's the bad guy in this. And I'm okay with Leguizamo, but I didn't really like him in this. He wasn't convincing or interesting. I didn't even like him until the movie was almost over, and then I still didn't like him very much. However, there is a ray of hope, ray of sunshine in this. Asia Argento. Oh, man. She is. She's always smoking hot. Though I'm not going to describe it in too much detail. Did some work with her about 1.5 years ago, and she's awesome. She's as short fuse as she is awesome. So she's an amazing package. Let's see. I'm not going to tell that story. I'll tell you offline. So Daryl, ask me. I'll tell you. Looking here at my notes, I don't mind saying that I can't write worth a shit at 1 a.m, just so you know. It's sad when you look when you're handwriting and go, what the fuck did I say? I'm really doing that here. Oh, okay. The best scene in this film, and I'll tell you in detail because I'm sure I'm the last person to see this because I kind of didn't want to. I have another weird reason for that. The priest, the best zombie scene in this film is when the guy's sitting there in the car with no roof and a headless priest grabs on him and he turns and you see that the neck's been severed clean at the shoulders and the body throws itself forward because the head is still attached by a flap of skin on the back of the neck. We don't see it. So the head flops forward and it's zombie face, and it bites onto his arm and rips through the skin. It was really nicely done. It was a beautiful shot. It looked awesome, but it was so fucking stupid. And it stole the movie as far as zombie stuff went. And it was so fucking stupid because a head on a flap of skin has no leverage. It can't grab, it can't bite, and it certainly isn't going to pull. And it's not going to shake side to side as they showed. So in the split second, I was thrilled and annoyed at the same time. And that was the best zombie shot of the film. And enough already. Can I get one sensible fucking zombie film? When you know you're in a 1 square mile full of 10,000 zombies, please stop walking into rooms with a teeny tiny flashlight going, hello, is anything in here? And then going, oh, okay, and sitting down and putting a Walkman on, putting headphones in, putting your iPod buds into your fucking ears. Give me a break. People begging to be killed. And that just pulls me out of the film. It absolutely pulls me. It's like when I see a guy riding like you've seen it on YouTube, some jackass riding a wheelie on his motorcycle, and then he fucking falls off the bike and breaks his leg. And you go, good, fuck him. And that's exactly what I say, fuck them. Should have happened 20 seconds sooner. That's what happens when you're so stupid, right? I'm tired of people being stupid in zombie films. You know, it's okay. And I'll shrug it off when I'm watching independent films made by some 15-year-old kid with his camera and he edits it in Vegas. Fine. That's no problem. I can shrug it off. But I expect more from George Romero. I do. Because he defined this genre. So I expect more from him. Doesn't mean I don't love the man. I expect more. And George, I think someone accidentally was playing with stereotypes back in the day. Night of the Living Dead, you know, the black. I mean, and his formula for the first 3 was pretty clear. And I've said this before, so I'll say it again in case this is the first time you've heard me. The formula for the trilogy was simple. You have a black hero, which for the first film was kind of controversial because he was playing against the white woman who was frail and became strong in the end. And then he always has a fat racist white guy, whether it's Cooper, whether it's Wooly, whether it's, Jim Baffico? I forget the character name from Day of the Dead, 85. It's always the same. Fat racist white guy. And there's a helicopter, you know, and that's the formula. They play lightly off the racial stereotypes. I think Night of the Living Dead was more accidental than anything else, and then it was kind of implied. Oh, as I'm watching Leguizamo look at the screen towards a zombie who was just a zombie pushing an old lawnmower. We're talking a lawnmower from like the fucking 50s where you have to push it, you know, and make the blades rotate themselves. And he's like, oh, stupid Mexican or whatever he says. Wow, I really had a part in this film? Okay. So I guess Leguizamo can make fun of Mexicans or Hispanics, you know, call them gardeners or whatever. I guess that's okay. Howard Stern has Robin Quivers. That way he can make black jokes. And I like Robin, don't get me wrong. But, you know, let's be honest about what these things are. I guess George got tired of the white guy screaming the racist stuff. Yeah, I put here, enough of theme zombies. I covered that. Big Daddy is boring and not endearing. Yes. And they did recreate Joe Pilato's death. I saw a man get pulled apart. Rib cage pulled out first. And in fact, when Fiddler's Green does eventually get destroyed and overrun, it's pretty much the exact same thing you saw when the bikers stormed the mall. Not much different. But I put here, zombies look great. And then I underlined Nicotero after that. Yeah, and I really feel that. They look fantastic in this film. And there is a bit of CGI as far as blood flying around, but a lot of this is practical stuff. And Nicotero all hail Nicotero, the king of zombies. Because there's no reason why Tom Savini can't do these things, right? He chooses not to, I guess. Like I said, I'm gonna have to look up his work. Whether Tom Savini can't, won't, or just plain don't do this stuff anymore, I don't know. I know he goes to conventions all the time. It's not like he's too old to do this. If it's in his heart, he certainly could. And Savini had a nice cameo in this. Much nicer than he was as Blade in Dawn of the Dead, where he yells, and I see you, chocolate man. Come on, man. You're an Italian from old school. Drop the fucking N-bomb. Call him Moulignon. Whatever the fuck you want to do. I see you, chocolate man. And maybe that was a conscious decision because George had everybody else drop it, had Wooly dropping the N-word like it was the word was. I mean, so why Savini wouldn't do that? Maybe it was because he didn't want to. And that's fine, but leave it out. Don't say chocolate man. What fucking Candyman? We talking Sammy D? What's up? If this movie wasn't made by George Romero, I would have liked it a hell of a lot more. And that's bad of me, and that's wrong of me for holding George to a standard. But after 20 years, I expect more from you, George. George and I actually went back and forth a bit in email back when he had his website and his web boards up, and he was very gracious to actually spend time talking to each of us. And him and I had a bunch of conversations back and forth just before he started this. And he pretty much told me that me and another guy were arguing about how the zombies really would work and physically what would be happening and like from a medical standpoint. And George pretty much told us that it didn't fucking matter. That when the shit hits the fan, none of these things are going to matter. It's what are we going to do and what's our relationship with these people going to be. And he used an interesting word in that email. I've got him, believe me, I've got him printed out. I may have him autograph him one day. Relationship. And he called them rotters, which I don't know. He went through a little phase where he called them rotters. He went out of his way in this film to show that they were a group now. They weren't just a group by default, but they were standing together. There's a big difference between standing in a crowd and being part of a movement. And he showed the zombies in this film, led by Big Daddy, as being part of a movement. And they storm the city. And they clean, and the foxes come to the chicken coop and fuck everything up. But then you see them walking out like, all right, well, we're going to go to Taco Bell. See ya. And Denbo, who was the hero of this film, I guess, though he wasn't very convincing. No one was convincing, other than Asia Argento was pretty cool at being, oh, who was the retard guy? I don't know. I forget his name, but he was good. Was it it was Charlie. I like Charlie. I don't think it's any mistake that they call the slow guy Charlie, okay? For fuck's sake. But I did enjoy him. I believe it was Charlie. Anyway, he's halvesy, half burnt on his face. I don't know. If this was someone else's film, it would have been decent and I would have entertained it. And I would have pointed out in several spots how, look, they're obviously trying to pay homage to George Romero. Was a lot of this film George trying to pay homage to himself? Maybe. He ended up mocking himself quite a bit. I didn't like that at all. So, in conclusion, this film is decent. It would be better if it wasn't George Romero doing this, but it is, so I've got to go with that. This isn't anywhere near as good as his previous work. A lot of this was forced. And maybe it's because it's not George's money going into it. I've heard George say that, or read rather, don't let me misspeak. A lot of hands like to get into the pie and make things happen and things he might not agree with. And I understand that that's part of funding. But George made some really great movies with next to no money. And I don't see why that can't be done now. Now, I know he's made more since then. There's Diary and Survival. And did I do Survival? I did Survival or Diary, whichever one took place. I think Survival, the one where they're all running around on the island and it was stupid. I already shit on that one. So I'm done shit. I guess I have one more George Romero film to go. I hope he doesn't make Diamond Dead. And you can probably find the concept for Diamond Dead online, where it's like, what was it? Some girl gets her favorite band killed and they come back as zombies and she makes a pact to bring them people to kill, or I don't know. It was something that was so stupid. I was like, who the fuck thought of this? And I'm like, oh, George Romero? Holy shit. I don't know. It's like when your favorite band makes a string of really good albums and then they come out with some shit where you go, ooh, yeah, I'm not gonna play that too loud in the car. I want people to hear me listening to that. But it is George Romero, and he is the all-time master. As I think Savini very clearly many years ago passed the torch of zombie creation on to Nicotero. I think maybe it's time George passes the new zombie torch off to someone else, or a group, or people could just stop. I just got a text. Probably not Zombie Farmer, but she's usually one that knows instinctively to text when I'm doing this. So on the Bradinsky rating scale, be it a buy, a borrow, or don't bother, this would be a borrow. It's a good film as far as what it is. It's a bad film when you're trying to make sense of it as a George Romero film and think that he actually was responsible for it. But it is worth a watch. The zombies in it are very, very good. And looking at it now, yeah, I see a lot of Walking Dead here. So if you're a Walking Dead fan, you definitely should check this out. Land of the Dead from 2005. I just realized that I forgot to include that the bigger evil in this film, the one we have to worry about almost as much as the zombies, is an actor by the name of Dennis Hopper, a fine actor who's no longer with us. I think this was a step down in his career, but he's very capable in the role. I'll always love him as the reporter in Apocalypse Now, Easy Rider, and other things, but it was good to see him get a good zombie film under his belt before he moved on. So hats off to Dennis Hopper. Your work is superb, as always. You might remember him from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, running around with fucking pretty much Ash going on with a fucking chainsaw in each hand, getting his shit together. But I didn't want to end the review without saying Dennis Hopper was in this, and he was pretty good. Anyways, guys, have a